Jai Guruji, Namaste Guruji, Jai Guruji Sangaji. Today is the 10th day of reading of The Divine Light of Anita Kumar, and I will be reading chapter 18 and 19. Before I start, I just want to know, am I audible? Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Chapter 18, Words Set in Stone. The unachievable becomes achievable with His grace. Anonymous. As I turn the pages of the satsangs, I realize the enormity and diversity in Guruji's blessings. From the minute to the mammoth, from the everyday and mundane to the extraordinary and unimaginable, His grace was all pervasive. One of my telepathic pleas to Him was to cleanse my karma with my former husband. I was entertaining this thought, and as some of us understand, the power of thought cannot be undermined. Guruji used to advocate the significance of positive, clear thinking as our thoughts manifest themselves to become our reality. It was a weekend during October 2011, and as I went about my routine, I was dwelling on the thought that I must meet my former husband and his girlfriend. I had come a long way as far as my personal growth was concerned, and I had regained my poise and position in life, and I wanted him to witness that. It was late evening when I received a call on my mobile and his number flashed before me. OMG, Om Mere Guruji, is there any thought of mine that you overlook? I answered the phone and he asked if I would like to join him the following afternoon for lunch with his girlfriend, as he would be in Manchester for business. Before this incident, I had never met them together, let alone have lunch with them. My heart skipped more than a beat, but I was still alive. I agreed once I caught my breath, and then immediately turned to his photograph to chat about this. Guruji, I know I asked you for this, but I ask of you not to compromise my dignity and self-respect. Am I nervous? No, of course not, because if I am, then I haven't learned the lesson. I must remain calm, composed, and indeed very charming. Earlier, just the mere thought of my former husband would make me uncomfortable, but now I had moved on. A friend of mine rang me the following morning asking me if I would like to join her for lunch. It was very unlike her to call, as she lived quite a distance away. I was convinced that Guruji didn't want me to go alone. Hence she came for lunch, and all four of us had an affable afternoon and got on like a house on fire. As we walked out of the restaurant, I turned around to them and blessed them both for eternal happiness. 5 years on from my separation, I had finally moved on in every respect. I was cheerful and chirpy and totally calm and composed. The cloud of my floating karma had finally lifted. My past has been cleansed and rinsed out, leaving no traces of any dirt whatsoever. I was free from the tight clutches of my history and clearly ready to begin a new chapter. It was also thanks to my past that I could now fully appreciate my present. Thank you again, my Guruji, for responding to some of my thoughts and for giving me a second chance in eradicating those that are futile and ineffectual. What more of His supreme presence does Guruji need to confirm to us? You've got to take the good with the bad, smile with the sad, love what you've got, and remember what you had. Always forgive. Learn from mistakes but never regret. As I came home, I bowed to his photograph with appreciation and amazement, and then patted myself on my shoulder and said audibly, "Well done, and now you can travel, light woman." Forgiveness is paramount to our spiritual growth, and even though I understood its importance, I was not able to completely let go of the past hurt until that afternoon. I had specifically prayed to Guruji for this lesson to be learned, and in doing so, I could move on to another level. Towards the end of November, I attended a social gathering where I gave a brief satsang on Guruji and how he prescribed meditation and its worth in daily life. From then on, with his grace, 4 women came to my place on a Tuesday where we engaged ourselves in a twin heart meditation followed by lunch. Post lunch, we had chai prasad and did the mantra jap, repetition of a sacred name of verse for 10 minutes. All this while, one of the Guruji's vibrant photographs sat on the coffee table with candles lit before it. In my secret tactic of connecting more people from Manchester to him, it was my secret tactic of connecting more people from Manchester to him. I thought this may have been a one-off occasion, but the Tuesday meditation classes grew and now I accommodate more than 12 women at my place at a time. Guruji's grace showered on everyone and piqued their curiosity to know more about him and his philosophy. These very women also attended the satsangs that are held on a monthly basis at various people's home here. Men and women from the Indian and non-Indian community called in to ask if they too could join. Jai Guruji. Guruji always has a plan for us, even though a shadow of doubt, as usual, passed over me until I recollected his words just after I walked out of my marriage. Tera kalyan kar deta, kalyan tu kara gayi. Anita, I have blessed you. My full blessings are on you. I have made you a leader. Go back to Manchester. I raised an eyebrow as he reiterated the latter two statements. Both were foreign to my mind. Going to Manchester was inconceivable to me, and the leader in me was not yet born. I was always a follower. You must focus on satsangs. Do satsangs and hold satsangs. This is your seva. At that moment, my satsangs lacked a flow and fluency, so again his words were Greek to me. The third statement, which I have never shared with absolutely anyone, and the one I am about to rock my world. Get married. I looked at him, aghast and appalled. I thought perhaps he had forgotten that I was separated and on the verge of filing for a divorce. Signing on the dotted line was still a faraway dream. With my unconcealed emotion flooding me, I frowned while he just smiled. I was baffled and bemused, and he calmly asked me to press his hand. While the thought of my prospective future sapped the living daylight out of me, he kept merely telling me to press even harder. Telepathically, I spoke to him, Guruji, have you by any chance forgotten that I am getting a divorce, and are you aware that just the mere sound of the word marriage makes my hair stand on end? Marriage had become a taboo word for me, and if at all the word ever came up, I related it to all that was negative. I had become hostile to the very institution and all that it stood for, and Guruji very well knew that. I made no bones about how antagonistic I was, and he just smiled. He would say humorously that wife, WIFE, is worried invited forever, and a husband, HUSBAND, is horse under severe burden and no diversion. Guruji's ways are most mysterious, and none of us are meant to demystify his claim. In hindsight, I realized that his infinite vision is not meant to be questioned or opposed, only accepted. Life will and does unfold his every claim, so surrender to his will is the one and only way to true and sustaining happiness. We all want that which is beneficial for the body, and he grants us that which is favorable for the soul. Only he knows what lesson need to be learnt through what experience before we climb higher on the spiritual ladder. In the same breath, we do not comply with all this with his will, then it is easy to fall off the ladder and we have to start afresh. His foresight of sending me back to Manchester worked in my favor, as I felt my life had a sense of direction and purpose and took on a new meaning. Besides taking care of my ailing mother, I was holding regular meditation classes and satsang. Mom was elated about this. Guruji had breathed a new life into her home as well as into the lives of the Indian community around. My heart and soul were laughing too. Contentment permeated my being for the very first time. Between all these activities, I was traveling extensively and ever so frequently too. The calmness that settled within me was evidently attracting more and more people to the meditation classes and satsangs alike. I was married to my cause, and this time there will be no divorce. I believe now, with the passage of time, as Guruji's children, it is important to live in accordance with his law. It is not enough to visit the temple if we do not actively work on ourselves to become truly worthy of his love. On the other hand, our true healing can only be promoted in an atmosphere charged with his love and compassion, so the temple occupies center stage in our self-realization. Regularity brings about inner change and evokes the desire in us to work on ourselves to make him proud of us. He gives us life, love, and light in abundance. But unless we embrace his each and every hukam to the letter, our lives will not be in sync with his will. Walking the path means to take every step in his direction, and that is the very reason he used to state that the path of spirituality is no easy task. It's a picnic to go astray and to engage ourselves in mindless activities. But there is a price to pay for that, and those who have immersed themselves in the dark will eventually knock on Guruji's door for salvation. The ultimate goal of every soul is to be liberated after the karmic cleansing has taken place. How extraordinarily blessed we all are to be into his fold. He settles our karmic scores and affords us moksha, liberation, because most of us get lost in our 1,000,001 desires and are too busy asking for more. In my view, that is such a waste, and yet another lifetime, we will again need to go through the routine of choosing our parents and the life situation that will ultimately enable us to attain salvation. As soon as we are born, we forget why we came here in the first place and allow ourselves to get entangled in the illusory glitter and gloss of the world. Most of us get trapped in temptations and spiral downwards instead of climbing up. One wrong thought can bring us down, hence we must be careful of the company we keep. A good individual can become rotten in wrong company. When we educate ourselves through good books and good company that give us the right knowledge, we shield ourselves from the wrong. But the world today has very evidently lost the connect, so individuals will keep being born in a repetitive pattern until they follow and find the light. On this note, I pray in earnest to our Guruji Maharaj to lend us all the wisdom to be able to truly surrender to him, for him to do that which is for our highest good. That was the end of chapter 18. I will now move on to read chapter 19. Cancer cured. With his ever-giving hands, he turns the improbable and the impossible around. Anonymous. I called up Hitesh Tara. He was holding a satsang in Le Meridian to mark a celebration he wasn't supposed to share with anyone prior to that. Meanwhile, I was jumping to my own conclusions and creating stories in my head about what that could be. Perhaps he has got engaged, or he has been promoted, or his sister was expecting again. His BBM was perplexing me, and I tried desperately to decipher his cryptic statuses. On asking him, he politely declined to share anything. He said it was Guruji's hukam to share on the satsang itself. He suggested that I make a trip to Delhi if I wanted him to share the blessings that had been showered on his family. I was sipping my morning tea while watching the terrible news about British economy. Grim times are here, I thought, and Guruji had said so specifically at the turn of the millennium. This was 2011 and tsunami had already left their devastating mark. Now there were riots across England as close as my doorstep, which made me shudder. Young teenagers were actively engaged in crime, and arson had become commonplace all of a sudden. Guruji had urged us to ask him for the real thing as bad times were imminent. Only he could see the degree of darkness there was looming over us. Naam manglo, naam de naal jud jao, asli cheez koi nahi mangda. Connect to the source, take my name. No one asks for the real thing. Turn the tide with your good thoughts and actions that will keep your head above water. Literally, I thought. I turned my focus to Hitesh again as the celebrations were well over. I couldn't contain myself anymore. I was so anxious to know that I first asked him to BBM me the synopsis of his satsang, and he did before he shared it in detail. Satsang by Hitesh Tara. It all started on 8 July 2011 when my dad asked me to accompany him to the hospital when he was advised to undergo some stomach-related test in which general anesthesia is administered. I did so without understanding what the test was all about. On reaching the hospital, I got to know that the test to be done was colonoscopy, something about which I had no clue. In layman's language, it meant taking photographs of the inside of the stomach. After the test was done, we went to meet the doctor who had the results pinned on his board. He started explaining in detail how there was a polypoidal growth in the rectal area. And then to my utter shock, he said, if you are thinking it to be cancer, we cannot say it with any certainty. We have sent a part of the growth for biopsy and will be able to confirm thereafter. Meanwhile, get a CAT scan done. I froze. I had gone to the hospital rather casually that morning, thinking it would be a routine test and was not expecting anything so radical. I remember complaining to Mom why Guruji has done this to us when we have been into his fold all the time. However, we started praying to Guruji for a favorable biopsy report. Few days later, we had the biopsy report, which was in consonance with the CAT scan confirming it to be a rectal tumor that seemed cancerous. The doctor asked us to rush to the surgeon to decide on the future course of action. We met the surgeon who explained the positioning of the tumor and how it could be removed by way of a two-stage surgery. There was a ray of hope when he informed us of another procedure, TEM, a non-invasive surgery by which the tumor could be removed without cutting the abdominal area. We were advised to take Dad for an MRI endoscopy and ultrasound so as to conclusively ascertain whether TEM was possible in our case. A day before the above-mentioned tests were to be done, my family and I went to Bade Mandir to pray to Guruji to see us through this phase and set everything right. I remember I fervently prayed to Guruji that night and begged him to give me a sign that he is with my family and everything was going to be fine. The moment I opened my eyes, I got the second Chai Prasad, a rare case in the mandir, which really made me happy and positive. I knew it was not a coincidence, but I needed a reassurance and I said to Guruji, if you give I knew it was not a coincidence, but I needed a reassurance and I said to Guruji, if you give another Chai Prasad to Papa, I would think you have treated him. After a while, the uncle who serves the Chai Prasad came with the last tray of the day, crossed Dad and went to the center of the hall, paused and looked around and came straight back to give Dad the chai prasad. We knew Guruji's way of working, and this incident really made us positive, and we decided to march forward fearlessly. The following day was Guru Purnima, a Hindu festival, and we went for the test. It lasted for about 45 minutes. During the test, the doctor was slightly confused and asked Dad when the CAT scan has been done. He came out and told me that though the tumor was there, the position was such that it could not be taken out by TEM, and also it could not be said with any certainty that it was cancer. We knew Guruji had started his treatment. The doctors were surprised and looking at the results suggested another procedure for the removal of the tumor, commonly done in India. We thought it was Guruji's way of making things easier for us by then. We had already researched and found that there was no doctor in India who could do a TEM, thus we gave our approval for it. The doctor asked us to get Dad admitted after a couple of days, when Dad, pointing towards Guruji's badge that I was wearing on my shirt, started to tell the doctor about Guruji. After looking at Guruji's photograph for a few seconds, the doctor told us that he wants to take a second opinion from one of his fellow doctors at AIIMS on whether the procedure he was contemplating was suitable or not, and told us to call him after a few hours. When I called him later, to my utter surprise, he informed me that he had got to know that TEM was being done at AIIMS and there was only one doctor in India who was doing it. The point here is that the doctor saw Guruji's photograph and had the idea to call up AIIMS only to discover that TEM, the most suitable procedure in our case, was being done at a hospital only 10 minutes away from our house. We went and met the doctors at AIIMS who asked Dad to get admitted. Accordingly, we got him admitted on a Monday for a surgery scheduled for Wednesday. On Tuesday, the doctor called us for a pre-operative checkup and to our great shock informed us that they would try to remove the tumor through TEM, but if during the surgery they realized that it was not feasible, then they would take an intra-operative decision to do the major surgery, that is the two-stage surgery, the one we wanted to avoid initially. Thus we were in a total dilemma, but keeping our faith in Guruji and thinking he has sent us to AIIMS, we gave our approval for the surgery. On the same day, a very funny incident took place. Dad randomly checked his sugar levels, which had shot up to 350. The pre-anesthesia team of the hospital therefore did not give its approval for the surgery to take place on Wednesday, and it was now postponed to Friday. Contrary to what we should have felt as a delay, we were happy because on Friday we had a satsang scheduled at our place. With Guruji's grace, we have a satsang at our place every last Friday of the month. And we knew Guruji was at work and that he wanted the surgery to be done on the day of the satsang. We decided that my mother and sister would go and manage the satsang at home, and my brother-in-law and I would be there for the surgery. On Friday, the surgery was scheduled at 9 a.m., but due to some reason, it got delayed and Dad was taken to the operation theatre at around 11 a.m. Now, what Dad remembered was that anesthesia was being administered to him around noon, that is exactly the same time when the jyot, candle, is lit at the satsang at our house. The surgery lasted for around 2.5 hours, which is exactly the same duration for which the satsang goes on at our home. Guruji's Aarti, a Hindu ritual, is carried out at 2:30 p.m. This was a clear indication from Guruji that he planned it this way to avert something grave. Later, to our relief, we got to know that the tumor was taken out through TEM and the major surgery was not required. The tumor was sent for biopsy, and after a week it was confirmed that it was not malignant. In fact, it was not even a tumor but a simple polyp that is just an unnatural growth. The doctor was completely surprised because deep inside he was sure that it could be cancerous. But we knew it was not his fault, but just another case of Guruji defeating medical science and looking after his children with utmost love. Jai Guruji. So that was the end of 19th chapter from The Divine Light by Anita Kumar. Thank you, Guruji, for giving the seva of reading the Divine Light and to be able to read so many satsangs of different sangats all over the world and to understand your grace, your mahima, your blessings. Thank you again. And before we end this session, we will do mantra jap 7 times. So please join me. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Thank you, Guruji. Thank you, Sangat ji.